Okay, I'm here in rates number 2, CAMI assignment. A proportion is a statement that says one ratio is equal to another ratio. And we have 3 methods to solve proportions. Number 1, we can use the scaling method. We can scale up or scale down. Number 2, we can use the unit rate method, where we change one ratio to a unit rate and then scale to the rate that we need. Or number 3, we can cross multiply and divide. So here, number 1, it says, on his way to visit his sister at college, Greg drives 135 miles in 3 hours. So part A question says, what is his average rate of speed in miles per hour? So we want miles per hour. Okay, now this word per right here is a key word when dealing with rates. Okay, per, when dealing with rates, is going to signal our horizontal fraction bar. So if I want miles per hour, I need miles on top of the fraction. Per is my fraction bar, hours on bottom. Okay, so he's going 135 miles in 3 hours. So I could write it like this: 135 miles is mi. Okay, per is the horizontal fraction bar, and then hours on bottom. So he went 3 hours, right? 135 miles per 3 hours. If I want his average rate of speed, I want the unit rate. How many miles in 1 hour? And so what I can do is I can set this rate or this rate equal to another rate of miles on top. Since miles are on top right here, miles go on top right here. And since hours are on bottom, hours will go on bottom right here. So if he travels 135 miles in 3 hours, how many miles? I can say how many miles in 1 hour. And we've learned that this is a unit rate. When we have different units, we're comparing miles to hours, and our bottom number, our denominator, is 1. Okay, so to solve this proportion, let's first talk about method number 1, the scaling method, where I scale up or scale down. Okay, so since I know both of these bottom numbers, I know 3 and I know 1, I don't know both the top numbers. I don't know this number. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to ask myself, how did I get from 3 to 1? Well, I need to divide, right? I need to divide by what? 3 divided by what gets me 1? Well, 3 divided by 3, right? If I take 3 and divide by 3, I get 1. And so since I did that on the bottom, I also need to do that on the top. To get from 135 to this number, I would also divide by 3. Okay, and so this would be called scaling down, right? I am dividing. I divided the top and the bottom by the same number. So 135 divided by 3, that's going to give you 45 miles per hour, and we can abbreviate that by mph, right? Miles per hour. So that is Greg's average rate of speed, 45 miles per hour. So that answers question or part A. Okay, we use the scaling method. Here in part B, it says how many miles will he travel in 8 hours? And so this is where we can use method number 2, the unit rate method. We were given a rate, 135 miles in 3 hours, and we first went to the unit rate, which we found was 45 miles per hour. Okay, and then after I have the unit rate, I can go to the rate that I need. So the unit rate is 45 miles per 1 hour. And now I want to know how many miles. Again, miles are on top of the rate. So how many miles in 8 hours? So I'll put an 8 next to the hours. And just like I did up here, I'm going to see if I can scale. How did I get from 1 to 8? Well, I am multiplying, right? Because I'm getting larger. 1 times what would be 8? Well, that would be 8, right? 1 times 8 is 8. And so if I multiplied by 8 on the bottom, I should also multiply by 8 in the top. And so I would do 45 times 8, and that would give me the number of miles that he travels in 8 hours. So 45 times 8, this number right here would be 360. Okay? So in 8 hours, he travels 360 miles. Circle final answer. Okay, so this is the type of work that I should see on your paper to answer part A and part B. So we talked about the scaling method, talked about the unit rate method. Here in number 2, we'll talk about cross multiply and divide. So it says Jan designs a new logo for Kim's website. Kim pays Jan $45 for 5 hours of work. How much money does Kim pay Jan per hour? So we're looking here for how much money per hour. So money per hour. So money should be on top of the rate. Per is the fraction bar, horizontal fraction bar. Hours should be on bottom, okay? So she pays $45 per or for 5 hours. So $45 per 5 hours. That was the rate in the problem. So I wrote the rate. And now I want how much does Kim pay Jan per hour or per 1 hour. And so let's set this rate equal to another rate, which would be the unit rate. And so money would be on top, dollars on top. And as you can see, hours are on bottom. Okay, so I want how much money for 1 hour. Okay, and I could use the scaling up or scaling down method, or the third method that we're going to learn about is cross multiply divide. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply these numbers together. So 45 times 1, that's 45. I'm going to set that equal to these numbers being multiplied. Now, this question mark, I'm going to turn into a variable since it's an unknown number. Let's turn that to the variable x. So that's our unknown. So I'm going to have 5 times x. 5 times x is simply 5x. Okay, so after I cross multiply, then I would need to divide, and I always divide by the number in front of x, or the number in front of the variable, which is called the coefficient. And so I'm going to divide both sides by this 5 because 5 is in front of the variable. So if I divide both sides by 5, these 5s would simplify to 1, and I would have 1 times x, which is simply x. And so x, my unknown number, is equal to 45 divided by 5, which would be 9. Now remember, this 9 is telling us how much money per hour. So this is $9 per. That's the same thing as the horizontal fraction bar. It's the diagonal. $9 per hour. Okay, that answers how much money does Kim pay Jan per hour? $9 per hour. Okay, here number 3 says Seth walks 1 1/4 miles in 5/12 of an hour. What is Seth's unit rate? So notice first off, this is a rate because we're comparing miles to hours, and we want the unit rate. So we want the bottom number to be 1. So let's first write this as a rate. So 1 1/4 miles per or in 5/12 of an hour. So 5/12 of an hour. Okay, so we need to take this rate to a unit rate. So we need our bottom number here to be 1. So we can also use our knowledge of this horizontal fraction bar. When you see the horizontal fraction bar, you should think division. So if I do numerator divided by denominator, that will give me a unit rate. That will give me a rate with a bottom number of 1. So let's do 1 1/4, the top number, 1 1/4, divided by, that's what the horizontal fraction bar is telling me, 1 1/4 divided by 5/12. So as you can see here, we are dividing fractions. Because 1 1/4 is a mixed number, we first need to use the C method. Remember the C method? Bottom number 4 times 1 plus 1 on the top. So 4 times 1 is 1. 4 times 1 is 4. And 4 plus 1 is 5. And I keep the bottom number the same, right? So 1 1/4 is the same thing as 5/4. Now remember, when we divide by a fraction, dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, which what helps us to remember that is KFC, keep, flip, change. So I keep my first fraction as is, 5/4. I flip my second fraction, which is going to be 12 over 5. And remember, the mathematical word for flipping a fraction is reciprocal. If I take the reciprocal of 5/12, I get 12/5. So I keep the first fraction, I flip the second one, and then I change from division to multiplication. Okay, now once I have kept, flipped, and changed, now it's like multiplying fractions. I look and see, can I cross simplify? And I can. Now here, this is not cross multiply, this is cross simplify. And so I'm looking for a number on top of the fraction and on bottom of the fraction that are divisible by a common factor. And here I see a 5 on top and a 5 on bottom. I know 5 over 5 is 1. And so I'm cross simplifying 5 over 5 to be 1, or 1 over 1. What about this way? 12 over 4. 12 over 4, well, I could say 12 and 4, those are both divisible by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now I multiply my top numbers. 1 times 3 is 3, and on bottom 1 times 1 is 1, and if the denominator is 1, I don't need it. So this is 3, remember, miles per hour. So mph, miles per hour. So if he goes 1 1/4 miles in 5/12 of an hour, that means he's going 3 miles in 1 hour, or 3 miles per hour. So that's Seth's unit rate, 3 miles per hour. In part B, we need Brianna's unit rate. So just like you did here in part 1, I want you to try it here in part B, find Brianna's unit rate, and then compare who has the faster walking speed, Seth or Brianna. Circle their name. Okay, number 4, complete the table and write a unit rate for the given situation. So notice here, the owner of a city parking garage uses a rate table so that he can look up the parking charges quickly. And so he charges $2.25 for half an hour. So how much will he charge in 1 hour? Well, remember, half an hour, that's like 30 minutes, right? And how many minutes are in 1 hour? 60, right? So as you can see here, if we simply double this amount, that's going to give us how much in 1 hour. So what's $2.25 times 2? That would be $4.50, right? So what I can do here is I can add a text box in here, click this T for text box, and click right here. That way I can simply type $, and then $4.50, okay? So if it's $2.25 for half an hour, it's $4.50 for an hour. So how much would it be for 2 hours? Well, I would simply take this rate. If it's $4.50 for 1 hour, I would need to times that by 2, multiply that by 2 to get how much it is for 2 hours. And so what's $4.50 times 2? $4.50 times 2, wouldn't that be $9? So $9, that's how much it'd be for 2 hours. All right, so what about for 1 1/2? Well, what if I take how much it is for 1 hour, which is $4.50? Okay, I'll take how much it is for 1 hour, which is $4.50. And what if I add how much it is for half an hour? Wouldn't you agree that 1 plus 1 or 1 plus a half is 1 1/2? And so if I could take how much it is for 1 hour plus how much it is for half an hour, that would give me how much it is for 1 1/2 of an hour. So what's $4.50 plus $2.25? I can put that in right there. Looks like that would be $6.75, right? So I put $6.75 right here. I would follow a similar process for how much it is for 2.5 hours. For 2.5 hours, I would take how much is it for 2 hours plus how much is it for half an hour. So $9 plus $2.25. That would give me how much it is for 2.5 hours. Okay, what about for 3 hours? I can take how much it is for 2 hours plus how much it is for 1 hour, add those together since 1 plus 2 is 3. That will give me how much it is for 3 hours. Okay, and let's see if you can figure out how much it is for 3.5 and for 4 hours. All right, so you try 5, 6, and 7 here. Be sure you set up a proportion, so one rate equal to another rate. So here we're going to have 265 miles per 5 hours, right? That is the rate given to us in the problem, and we want to know how many miles per 1 hour. So set this equal to some number of miles per 1 hour, some number of miles per 1 hour, and you solve the proportion using one of the 3 methods. Okay, you try 6 and you try 7, set up a proportion, just like number 5 and in the previous problems. Okay, once you're done, you'll click the Turn In button in the top right-hand corner, but be sure you have all of your work shown.